Hello everyone, welcome back to the Dungeon Learner's Guide. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I haven't done a Pioneer deck tech in quite some time, so I wanted to take out one of my Pioneer decks and just kind of show it off, talk a little bit about what it is. I've gotten back into Pioneer a lot lately, so I just wanted to take this chance to kind of highlight this. This is an Abzan Greasefang deck, so it is designed to play Greasefang, Okiba Boss, as early as possible. It's not going to really ramp, so you're getting it out probably turn 3. There are some incredibly lucky things you can do to get it out turn 2, but most likely turn 3. And then get some form of big vehicle into the graveyard, typically Parhelion 2, which is going to be making 4/4 angels. So, in theory, one of your best draws would be get Greasefang into play on turn 3, get Parhelion in the graveyard, and then as you move to combat, Greasefang gets back the Parhelion, and then the Parhelion can immediately attack because it's got haste, so you're hitting your opponent for 13 total damage, and then you get to leave behind 2 angels, which can hopefully close out the game the turn after. So, provided your opponents have no interaction, provided there's nothing that they've got going on, this is going to start taking people out as early as turn 4. And of course, there are other things that you can do because you've got to get to that setup. So, just to kind of run through, our early game tends to involve Fatal Push. We want to be able to deal with our opponent's threats. We have Thoughtseize to be able to take out anything that our opponents might be trying to do to stop us. And then we have ways to put cards into graveyards. So we've got Stitcher Supplier to mill 3, Satyr Wayfinder to look at the top 4 and then put a land into our hand. We've got Grizzly Salvage to look at the top 5, put a creature or land into our hand. Typically, turns 1 and 2 are going to involve some combination of those cards, being able to put cards into graveyards, being able to interrupt what our opponents are doing. And then in the late game, say we get to the point where we've accidentally milled all of our Greasefangs, we want to use Can't Stay Away as a way to get them back, be able to put them back into our hand. And then that is also the kind of sneaky, it is possible to get Parhelion on turn 2 if we somehow manage to, with our turn 1 mill, which would have to be Stitcher's Supplier, get both a Parhelion and a Greasefang. We can then Can't Stay Away on turn 2, get the Greasefang, which gets the Parhelion. It's very, very unlikely because you only get to mill 3 cards with Stitcher's Supplier, but it's not impossible. I've never done it, but I've gotten very, very close. Other than that, we of course have some backups. So Parhelion is our main vehicle that we want, but we also have a couple of Asika's chariots as well, because those are going to put cats into play. That's going to be one of the ways that we can actually fill up our board, being able to make 2 cats and then crew the chariot and attack, get a 3rd cat. It's typically more defensive than anything else. Parhelion is the main one that we want, but it is there. And then we have some other pieces of interaction. So, for example, we have Liliana, which is a great way to have us discard things. So we can discard our Parhelion, we can discard our Chariot, we can maybe discard things we're not using. It also can remove an opponent's creature, can force them to sacrifice. And if we ever do happen to get the ultimate, that is basically just a win condition on its own. We have 1 Skyclave in the main board, we have more in the sideboard as a way to interrupt what our opponents are doing. And then we also have Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord. This is a card that I've kind of just been testing out because it does reanimate, so it comes in with 4 loyalty. You can -3 to get Greasefang back out of the graveyard, which is very powerful. But it also gives everything lifelink, so being able to hit our opponents for 13 and then gain 13 life is incredibly powerful. And this is just a deck that really wants to win as early as possible, but it also has plenty of ways to kind of survive into the late game and slowly grind out our opponents as we're getting more and more value. And because of that, we do have a 1 of Tassiger the Golden Fang in here as well as our late game value engine, being able to delve, get it into play for only 1 mana, and then being able to mill ourselves for 2 and return a non-land to our hand is a way to just kind of control the state of the game, make sure that we are constantly evolving and adapting our game plan as the game goes on. Other than that, for the main board, we have the mana base, which is very heavily in some of the fast lands, being able to play them as quickly as possible. We've got the shock lands, we've got the flip lands. I would like to add the Surveil lands to this list. Probably not a ton of them, if I'm being perfectly honest, because we do want to be as quick as possible. But I do think having 2, maybe 3 of them in the mana base would be a great way to take advantage of the Surveil, being able to put things into our graveyard. And then, of course, this is where the greed comes in. We've got a bunch of 1-ofs in the mana base as well. We've got one of the flip lands. We have an Urborg just for some mana fixing. We've got a Takenuma as another way to get creatures back. We have the Triome for just in case. And then, of course, the greed that I mentioned, we have a single basic swamp. So if we ever run into a bunch of people playing like Krenko's Buzz Crusher or Land Destruction, Field of Ruin effects, we are a little bit out of luck, and that does tend to be a bit of a weakness of the deck, but it's very important that we can cast our spells when we need to. Being able to go from a 1-drop in black into a Golgari or an Orzhov spell into a double white spell or a double black spell means that we really need our mana base to function incredibly efficiently, which is why we have so many shocks and so many fast lands as opposed to things that would enter the play tapped. But that is our main deck. And then the sideboard, our 15-card sideboard here, we've got I didn't have the space to lay it out, but we have Collective Brutalities. We got 2 of those. There's 4 culling rituals, because one of the biggest problems we can actually run into is our opponents having too many small things that we can't quite deal with. So if we're running against something like Rakdos that is going to have a lot of 1 and 2 drops, if we're running against a token deck, if we're running against the Insole Artifact deck that wants to play a ton of little spells and then power them up with making them 5/5s. Culling Ritual is a great way to do that, and then it helps us actually ramp into the Parhelion. It doesn't make white mana, which is a little unfortunate, but it still helps us get there. Otherwise, the rest of the sideboard, we have Fracture for removal, Legion's End for removal, Liliana for removal, but also for just kind of shutting down anything our opponents are doing. So if they have a creature that's dealing 1 or 2 power, it's a great way to just slowly tick it up. And then we can also bring it in against control if we need to, because having the Last Hope and Liliana of the Veil are great ways to kind of stifle the control decks, because once it's in play, it's very difficult for our opponents to deal with it, and at the same time also deal with the threats that we are providing. And then also for control, we have Voice of Resurgence, which we have a full playset in there as a way to punish the control players for doing things on our turns, punish people for maybe fatal pushing our Greasefangs or instant speed removing our graveyard. It gives us another avenue of attack that can at least do something. I'm still kind of tweaking the sideboard a little bit. There's quite a few cards I'd like to put in. I want to test out I think it's Witherbloom Command. It hasn't quite gotten to where I want it to be. I'm hoping to get a couple of copies in here. The issue I'm running into is what to take out for them. So, like I said, I didn't want to spend too long on this deck tech. I just kind of wanted to highlight it. I am a huge fan of Pioneer. I love playing Pioneer, and that doesn't come across very often on the channel. So I wanted to take a second and highlight just a little bit of what the deck is. One of the main decks that I play, I actually built this for my wife because she loves rats and she thought it was funny to put a rat into a car. So that's where this came from, and we've slowly been tweaking it since. So let me know down in the comments if you want to see more Pioneer deck techs in the future. If you do, let me know what you might be interested in seeing. I can, of course, work on decks of any type. If people are interested in specific things, I can put together lists. But if you're interested in what I specifically have, I have this list, of course. I have an Azorius Spirits deck, which did show up a long time ago on this channel, so it's been tweaked a little bit since then. But I do still have that. I have a Temur Energy list, I have a Mono Red Goblins list, and then I have a Mono Black Devotion list. So if people are interested in seeing any of those decks, please do let me know. And if Pioneer's not quite your thing and you want us to stick to Commander decks, that is perfectly fine. I'm hoping to also show off some of my personal Commander decks, because I don't quite get the chance to play them too often anymore, so it's nice to be able to pull them out once in a while. So let me know what you thought of this kind of shorter form deck tech, a little bit more personal, because I've got the cards physically laid out. And let me know if the cards popping up on the screen was effective or not. But overall, thank you so much for watching. Please do like the video if you want to see more of this, and then of course subscribe to the channel. So once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side of the Dungeon Learner's Guide.